Thank you, Miss Barby Ingle, for joining us today. I've been excited to talk to you. I've been following your story, and I think your story and what you've done in the rare disease community and now in your political career will be such an inspiration for the people in the rare disease community and anyone who watches this. So maybe you can start us off by telling us a little bit about your background and what initially drew you to work in the rare disease nonprofit sector.
So my background was in cheerleading. And I started cheering at 4 years old. I looked at my father and said, I saw a cheerleader, actually a whole team of them. And I said, I want to do that the rest of my life. And he said, you can't. But turns out I can. I just had to find a new way to do it. So I was head coach at Washington State University, and I was a business owner for a cheerleading and dance training company. And I was on my way to work, and I got in a car accident, and it triggered a rare disease in my body. My body started attacking itself, and it took me 3 years. 42 doctors got it wrong. The 43rd doctor got it right. I went through all kinds of testing, over-treatment, under-treatment, mistreatment, had my rib taken out. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. I've had over 50 surgical procedures, and I had to become my own best advocate. And when I learned how to become my own best advocate, I finally started getting the help and the treatment I needed. I had spent 7 years bedbound and wheelchair bound, and said there has to be something more and something better. And that was 2005. I got diagnosed. 2009, I finally got the proper treatment, and I started to get asked to come and testify and speak up about bills that were going on or make phone calls to my legislators. So I was really like surface in the legislation, but I knew that I wanted to teach people that they could speak up. They didn't just have to follow exactly what the doctors told them, especially when it came to something rare, that we all have to be in it together, and we all have responsibility in moving the needle forward, no matter which disease we have. But especially with rare diseases, we have to speak up and we have to do more. And so that's how I got into legislation, was doing more and speaking up and sharing my story, and then being asked to share with legislators. And now I've worked on legislation in 36 plus states, worked on 100 bills, worked on federal bills, and I've also worked with the Department of Defense to get access to care for our military.
That's great. And when you were saying that, kind of to have that conversation, maybe the difficult conversation with the doctors or challenge the doctors, I was kind
Yes.
of on the side where I was like, hey, this is the doctor. Let's just,
Never.
show the
Right.
respect. My wife, on the other hand, was kind of like you. And she was like, no, I don't trust this. This doesn't seem right. I want to get a second opinion. And it was good that I had her on my side to do that. So
I
I'm glad.
started out the same way you did. I started out,
No.
my mother was in the medical field, both in the Army and in public health. And I said, if they have a white coat on, they know more than me. They studied, they know what they're doing, never question. And then I got overtreated, undertreated, and mistreated, and said, wait a second, there has to be more to this. It can't just be they're right, and yet they can't figure out what's wrong. So it literally took me to stand up and say, I had a doctor say, I think I know what's going on. This was after 3 years of treatment and rushing in to get my rib taken out, which ended up, that doctor made a mistake and messed up my lung. And it just cascaded into more and more damage to my body. And I've said, okay, I will go home and study what you're asking me to do, because you wanted to give me another surgical procedure. I'll go home and study it, and then I'll let you know if I'm going to do it or not. And that was the first time I advocated for myself. Then I started to teach other people, hey, you don't just have to listen to what they say or just take what they offer. Every doctor offers something different. So that doctor might not have the tools that you need, especially when it's a rare disease. So you have to keep learning, asking questions, and hopefully you find providers, if they don't know, they're willing to study and learn and grow with you, which is what happened with my primary care doctor.
Yeah, and you talking about finding the person or the doctor that could take on your case, because as a rare disease, maybe they don't know your case. We ran into that problem as well, where, okay, there's no doctor over here that knows about it, but who's willing to learn with us? Because, and they say it all the time with the rare disease community, the parents, in my case, the parent or the patient, is oftentimes the expert. And I don't know if doctors find that intimidating or if they have just huge caseloads and they're like, I want to go this direction, or liability, like they don't want to take on our case. But we've had many cases, even still, where doctors just don't want to take on our case and we just move on. We try not to let it, affect us emotionally, but it does sting each time you hear a doctor say, no, you need to find someone else.
Absolutely. And if the doctor's able to say that as a patient or as a caregiver for, if you're working with a child or you're working with someone who is bedbound or wheelchair bound and you're caring for them, you have to be their voice too. So this isn't just about the rare disease patients, but the whole rare disease community stepping up and talking and sharing and saying something so that we can get better access to care, and that doctors aren't afraid of, oh, if I do this, I'll get sued. If I don't do that, I'll get sued. We need to make it so that, hey, I'm at the worst I could ever be or I've ever been. How do we build my life back up? How do we get something back and not be afraid of that situation?
Very true. And you talked about your work, kind of like in the nonprofit sector where you're working on bills and legislation. But what was it that caused you to transition from nonprofit to running for the Arizona House of Representatives?
I'm going to say God. A couple of years ago, I said I had been the president. Well, I'd been chairman of the International Pain Foundation for 2 years, and then I was president for 10 years. And I felt like I needed to give somebody else a chance at leadership and a voice and maybe move in a different way. I felt stuck in a silo. I felt like all of our voices were reverberating and people were just saying, oh, this is what Barbie wants to do, so let's just do this. But it's not just what I want to do. We need to come together as a community. So I stepped out of it. I still volunteer and I still work with multiple organizations, Global Genes and RDLA and Every Life. I still do a lot of work with a lot of different charities. I just stepped out of the leadership role and prayed about it and said, God, I feel like you're leading me to do something more. And please show me what that is. And I was like, is this it? And it would not work out. Is this it? It wouldn't work out. And November 11th, 2023, I was in a parade for a beauty pageant that I was involved with. And afterwards, I went to a park and we had a local community table set up there for precinct committeemen to talk about voting and get people registered. And one of the leadership people that was attending that event said, hey, I've heard around that you've worked on legislation. You've not just worked on it, but I've written 7 bills and 2 of them are now law here in Arizona. And just as a civilian, imagine if you were a legislator and you could sponsor your own bills and you could do some of these things, go into the areas that aren't being touched on in healthcare and other things that are going on in the community. Would you want to step up and help a little more? And I said, I'll pray about it. I'll talk to my family about it. And then in December, the end of December, I ended up getting into the race, not realizing that there was 5 other people I was going to be competing with. But they didn't like the 5 that were in. They were looking for a new voice and someone to take this in a new direction. And they saw that in me, and that I wasn't stepping in on day one, not knowing what to do. I've already done all the different levels except for sponsor my own bill. And I'm hoping that I do make it in as a legislator, but if I don't, I will still continue to work on bills as a volunteer civilian because I know I'm effective and I can get things done. I would just like to do it faster.
Well, I think that makes you a good leader because being proactive, looking forward, that's a powerful story as well. You talked about your leadership role in the nonprofit. Can you talk about, and I know that you had talked about the bills as well, but were there any key achievements, in your leadership roles or milestones that you're most proud of when you're working with the rare disease nonprofit groups?
One of my favorite projects that I helped create from idea to reality is called Nervember. And every November we have Nervember. And I got the idea. I was on a plane during October 2009, and everything on the plane was pink. They changed the seat covers on the plane. Like literally, they made it a pink plane. And I said, we need to do this for rare diseases. We need to do this for my rare disease, but also other rare diseases. Even if I don't have that disease, we need to be talking about this. So on that plane ride home, it was almost 6-hour flight. I asked the flight attendant for napkins, and I took out a pen and I started writing down ideas, and I got off the plane with an idea called Nervember. Nerve is nerve pain, and ember is the burning fire pain that we feel, and the fire within us to move forward and do something, take action. And I started it that first year, and maybe a few hundred people participated. The last few years, we've had over 60 million interactions during the month of November for Nervember around the world. We have people from all over the world, and we do it a little bit different. And I've been the director of it, but I've also just been a participant and had other people lead it and direct it, because I wanted to switch it up and not let it get stale and be the same thing year after year. We also changed the diseases, and most of the diseases that we cover are rare diseases. And typically we do 60 diseases in a month, 2 a day, and we're sharing information, treatments, how to get diagnosed, resources throughout the community. And to grow it from just a couple of hundred people the first year to 60 million interactions, and hopefully one day we'll reach 100 million, but we haven't got there yet. But to me, that one has made the most difference around the world in sharing rare diseases and things. That I get letters and emails from people that say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you spotlighted my disease, and I thought no one's ever heard of it. And yet here it is. And, it could be anything from a genetic disease like 4q deletion syndrome to arachnoiditis, or, everything in between. So it really changes each year, but the core of it remains the same. It's all about awareness. It's not about fundraising. It's not about anything except for building up the community and raising the volume on the different rare diseases that are affecting us and how they affect us in our everyday life.
I know that we have our rare disease day, and I love that day.
Yes, and I participate in that
But
too.
we need I'm sure you do, because you're everywhere, but we need a month, and I'm glad that you made that month. And I look forward to seeing that grow.
Thank you. There's about 9,000, 10,000 rare diseases now that are known. And some of them are very, very ultra rare, and some of them are a little less rare, but still qualify as rare diseases. But we need to get that information out to the public, and many people still don't know how rare disease affects so many of us here in the United States, but also around the world. So we're helping people. We even teamed up with Uganda, the government of Uganda, and they held during Nervember, they had a park, and they set up tents and had free healthcare where patients could come in and meet the specialists from around Uganda to talk about what their symptoms were, get diagnosis and treatment. And it's really been an honor to have something that's catching on around the world that is really affecting the everyday lives of rare disease patients and their families.
And I can see how that would prepare you for this transition, because when I first heard going from nonprofit to political, obviously wow, that's so amazing. But then I'm also, how do you do that transition? And was there anything that kind of prepared you for that transition, or was it you just had a passion to go that direction and just took it on?
In the nonprofit world, I had been advocating for different legislation, not necessarily like pick this person over that person type of politics, more the rare disease community, the chronic illness community, the chronic pain community. We need these certain tools in our lives so that we can live better daily lives, and so that we can contribute to society to our fullest. And so the skills that I learned as a nonprofit volunteer and as a leader have actually helped me when I go and knock on random people's doors. And I'm that rare person knocking, and they say, no other candidate has knocked on my door. Wow, it's really nice to meet somebody that's out actually meeting the community. But I had that exposure to meeting the rare disease community all over the world. So going up and knocking on the door isn't scary for me. It's, hey, what are your pain points? What has been happening in your life that you would like to see fixed? And how do we come up with ways to fix those things? And even I knocked on a woman's door and she didn't answer, and I left my card and I went on to the next house, and she came out of her house. She got the card. She came out of her house and was like, "Are you Barby Ingle? Are you really Barby Ingle? Are you?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's me. That I'm Barbie. I'm a candidate now." And she's like, "I have a rare disease, and you helped me back in, years ago. And I live here now, and I have a family, and I've improved my life, and it was because of the help that you gave me then." So imagine, as a legislator, if I was able to do that, and now I'm able to change laws that affect their lives on a daily basis. Imagine how much more I'll be able to do. But running into patients, I've been running into zebras, as we call ourselves, all over my district, and people saying, "Oh, I helped you when you were doing this bill. I made a phone call, or I wrote a letter." It literally has been fun. And when I am with other people that are candidates running for office, they're like, "Oh, the hardest part is knocking on a door or making the phone call." Being a part of the nonprofit taught me how to do that and not be afraid of it, and to know that there's 7 billion people on earth. If you don't connect with one, you'll connect with another. They'll connect with somebody else, but we all still make this big picture, and we're all pieces of the puzzle that will come together. And with legislation, I'm seeing those same skills, and I'm utilizing them in becoming a legislator. And like I said, whether I win or not, I'm still going to keep moving forward and making things happen for the rare disease and chronic community.
Well, we think you got the win. I think knocking on doors and connecting with people always triumphs. And when you talk about meeting another zebra, I almost sometimes don't like the word rare disease, because it gives this impression that, it's very obscure and there's no one else out there. And it may, like, other people that are not in the community, dismiss it. Or if you're in the community, you're like, there's no hope. But, there's that statistic that in America, there's 1 in 10, like one person in the elevator is going to have a rare disease. And then it gives you a little bit more hope, because that number you said earlier, whatever it is, 7,000 to 10,000 rare diseases together as a community, we're not rare. And I think that does give a lot of hope.
We aren't rare. We all have different challenges in our life, but when we work together and create synergy, we can do something about that. And many of the challenges that we face overlap, even though we have different diseases and different challenges that we're facing. So it's absolutely inspiring to meet other zebras along the way. And I know that I've inspired some people already to run for office. So I'm hoping other zebras and their families will step up and say, "Hey, we want our voices heard too. And this is another way to do it." And, we do have to keep that separation between nonprofit and legislators, but we are able to bring forward our needs, and the legislators should be there to hear them, listen to them, and take action on them to help us get the things, the tools, the resources, the community that we need to have, and help us be a part of society. And my kind of hashtag prior to running for office was cheerleader of hope. So you're talking about hope. And one thing I learned is even the smallest glimmer of hope can get you through the worst situation. And so hold on to that hope and know that things can improve, things have improved, things will continue to improve, and that you can be part of it.
Amen. So you're running for office. So what are the main issues you plan on focusing in your campaign for the Arizona House of Representatives?
So there's a few different issues that are challenging here in LD7. One is healthcare. I want to see individualized care come about, and look at the patient in front of you. What do they need? Let's not keep over-treating and under-treating patients or mistreating patients. Let's give them the individualized care. Part of that for me is genetic testing, and I think we need to make genetic testing more available for everybody, every human. I believe I've done a lot of genetic testing. I just did a whole genome sequencing myself, and I got my husband to do one. And I think that if that was available to our parents when we were born, and we could take that information through life. I was born with a learning disability, and I had to go through special education, But there was a time between kindergarten and first grade where my parents had to fight for me to get that special education. Had they known, looking at my genetics, because it's showing up in my genetics testing, that, hey, I need to learn a little bit differently, I could have been a lot further progressed in my education. Looking at things like that. And also here, our education system, we give a lot of funding to our administration. And I think that we could consolidate administrators and take that funding, which it's our like 51% of our state budget. I would like to take that funding and put it and consolidate the school districts and put the funding towards the students and their actual learning and education. And again, just like in healthcare, individualizing what do the patient or what do the students need and how do we get the best teachers and bring it down to that personal level once again. And then we also have water rights, energy independent rights, business, keeping the small businesses going, especially after COVID devastated so many of them. And we also are very big here with like farming, cattle, natural resources, and we have to look at that and make it sustainable long into the future. I want to make sure that the people who are here 100 years after us have the resources that they need to live their best life as well. So looking at all of that and taking it into consideration.
That's great.
Transportation, so many things that need fixing. But I think it has to be a multi-pronged approach, and all of the different areas overlap each other, just like rare diseases overlap each other. And so we have to check out all of the different areas and make sure that we're doing what's right for each area.
And as you said, there's many issues there. And just as you were talking about budgeting and finance.
Yes.
In the nonprofit world, you're no stranger to making a buck stretch and, making a lot
Absolutely.
happen off of a
Yes.
little bit of money, and also being frugal in how you spend it and not wasting it. So I think those are great attributes.
Absolutely. And you get to request 4 committees. And one of them that I would be asking for is appropriations, which is budgeting. And I feel like I would do really good at it. One, I worked at a university and was part of the state budget and making sure that all was working and getting rid of the overspending and the waste in my budget as a coach. So I think I would do very good at that. And then with nonprofits, you have to take very little funding, donations, grant funding, whatever it is, and make it work. And still, I've seen the smallest budgets make the most impact on projects and on the community. So seeing that, I asked for appropriations, and one of the current legislators laughed and she said, that's the committee that we give to people who we don't really like so much. And she's like, that wouldn't be a good committee for you. I was like, no, I think I would do great on that committee because I could show people how we could live with less funding. We could lower taxes. We could still have great products and services and resources and tools without the spending, the waste. I can spot in a budget where the waste is. And I would love to work on that area, as well as healthcare, obviously. And I would love to get a rare disease advocacy council here in our state.
So as an expat living overseas, I still pay U.S. taxes. And, I think many citizens will say, I don't mind paying taxes. I agree to paying taxes as long as they go to where they're saying. But could we please first check the books and make
Yes.
sure before you start taking it from me that we've allocated all the resources and funding appropriately? And,
Absolutely.
that sounds like the direction you're heading.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
talked about knocking on doors being difficult for some of the other people, or maybe people have spoken that to you. But what are some of the challenges that you face now that you're on the campaign trail and you're trying to overcome those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge has been communication, getting people, if they're set on a candidate in their mind, they don't want to hear from another candidate, so to say, because they don't want me to come in and change their mind. And so that's been a challenge of if they were already set in who they were going to pick, then all of a sudden they hear me. I've had people say, well, you're my third choice. Well, there's only 2 seats. So if you really like what I'm saying, but I promised them my vote. I'm like, well, But do you want a better society? Do you want a better community? You have to look at what each of us can do and our strengths and find the two best partners that can go forward as representatives for our area and for our state to make it the best it can be. And so you can't get stuck on, oh, I promised this person or that person that I was going to vote for them. You have to say, here's my choices. Who's the best choices? And really dig in and vet us and look at who we are, what we're about, and what we've done, what we can do, what we are saying we are going to do. And then that's really my biggest challenge. I love the knocking on doors. I love the phone calling and the texting and the community connections. And I think that those have all played to my strengths. So it's really, I've been having fun. And I know most of my competitors and other legislators that I've talked to, they think the campaigning is not so fun. But for me, it's been about communicating and getting out and having people hear me, even when they haven't wanted to. It's then they hear me, then they have the hard choice of, okay, now which ones do I pick? Because she's changed my mind. And I have enjoyed it. Even the debates, I think, have been hard for me. But the first debate, all six conservative candidates showed up. And at the end of it, the audience voted and I got first place. So I felt like, woo. Then I went to my next debate because I have 4 counties and I've done 5 debates. And the next debate, only 4 of the candidates out of 6 showed up. And then the next debate, 3 of the candidates showed up. And then the next debate, 3 showed up again, but they were me. I've been at every one. And then the other ones are like popping up and down. And then this last debate, only 2 of us showed up. And so it's like, what is happening that their candidates, these are set debates. We're supposed to show our whole district that we're there for them and being willing to represent all of them, but yet they're not showing up. It's confusing to me. But I'm there, I'm showing up, even if I have a migraine or bad pain day or whatever it is I'm going through, I've shown up and put in the effort to make sure that they know I am here, I do care, and I'm willing to share and ask or answer any question that's asked.
Yeah, and I think anyone that doesn't know, the common thread that I've seen in the rare disease community is determination and resiliency, and those come in abundance in our community. And I think that does add to your toolkit. But I also think if you do find those voters that are reluctant and they're just headstrong on another candidate, but you don't give up and you do flip them, they end up becoming some of the biggest advocates and
Yes,
cheerleaders for you.
absolutely. And I put out a tweet recently that said, get engaged and vote. Make sure you vote as if this is cheering for your favorite team in the Super Bowl or collegiate game. Like, this is the Rose Bowl. Now's the time. Start cheering. And the rare disease community and the chronic pain community have been really some of my biggest cheerleaders through the last 6 months of running for office and helping me get through, because they know that I have that resilience and determination and I want to live. And while I'm living, I want to make humanity the best it can be. And they've seen that through my actions all these years. So they have been getting behind me, not just the ones from my district, but from all over the country.
So I heard about your nonprofit work and your political work, but I think another important perspective for us to look at is kind of your personal life. So you're doing all of this. How are you managing now what you're doing with your campaign, what you maybe continue to still do for the rare disease community and still have your personal life and your family life?
Yeah, so I schedule everything. It's I have to schedule in time. I have I have to have my husband time. I have to have my family time. I need to have personal time. Sometimes, I still do infusion therapy, so I schedule those days to make sure that I've taken the time to make sure my health is okay. And I'm going to go knock on doors this many hours. And if I need to, I even put on my website. Sometimes you'll see me in my wheelchair. Sometimes you'll see me with a cane or a walker. Don't let it alarm you. I'm going to keep going. And this is the tool to help me keep going. And so I've just had to do the same thing in my personal life. Luckily, my husband does most of the cooking and well, all of the cooking and most of the cleaning. So that's very helpful. My husband has been my rock, and he's been right there with me, helping me. When we're driving to an event, we have that time to talk. Especially my district is over 10,000 square miles, so we have a lot of talk time and drive time and rekindling, our personal lifetime in those drives, and also seeing such a beautiful state here of Arizona, driving around to all the different areas. But it's something that we're doing together. Just our nonprofit work we've done together, going through all the health challenges has been together, working with my family and talking to them. Hey, this is going to take my focus and shift it. And I still strongly believe that we have a lot to work to do with rare diseases and with the nonprofits. I'm just going to be shifting my focus and doing it in a different way, but don't stop what you're doing. Don't stop living, don't stop helping, don't stop getting involved. This is just another tool that we're adding to the toolbox. And with their help, I've been able to manage and stay as active as I can be, and take the time when I am having a bad day. I've had other patients that have stepped up and been making phone calls for me, and sending text messages and doing what they can do so that I don't get physically overwhelmed by running for office and keeping my personal life really strong. But I can tell you, I've only taken a handful of days off since January. I've done something every day, 1 to 5 events in a day, knocking doors or calling, going to meet and greets. I've been doing something every day, except for a handful where I had to stop and take care of myself medically. Yeah, I've had to stop. I have to stop and take time to do my infusion therapy. And there's, I even had a meet and greet. It was the day after my infusions, and I was still having I hadn't bounced back yet. I was having a real bad day. And I got a call from another candidate saying, hey, when are you going to arrive? It's like, what are you talking about? Where am I supposed to be? I keep a schedule. Nobody confirmed anything. I would have been there. But and he's like, well, I can hear it in your voice that you're not having a good day. I was like, nope, I'm having a really bad day. I'm in my pajamas. I'm in bed. I didn't have it on my schedule. I didn't know I was supposed to be there. And he goes, don't worry, I got you. And he got up and told everybody who I am and about me, and that I live with a rare disease, and I was having a bad day, but this is all the reasons why they should vote for me. And after that, I got emails and phone calls saying, hope you're feeling better and hope you're doing okay. And you got our vote. And he did a great job representing me and stepping up. So it's going to happen, but every day that I can, I will be there. And if you want to be sure to have me do something, make sure you're on my schedule, even if it's personal, but especially if it's campaign related. It needs to be on the schedule or it's not happening.
I'm 100% the same way. And as I hear you talk, you're such a positive person. You're such a motivated person. What is it that makes you that way, or how do you stay that way? Or is there something that we could tell the listeners on how they can kind of transition to this mindset that you have?
A couple of things. One, growing up as a cheerleader, my dad would say, how are you still smiling when your team is losing? You're supposed to be cheering and positive and happy, but it's because we practice positivity as cheerleaders, and responsibility and time management and all these other skills as well. But we practice being positive. And I think that gave me a step up when I developed the rare disease, that although I lost everything, I went from top of the world, living my dreams with my own company and a Division 1A coach, to food stamps, not able to drive, basically losing my job, my company, losing everything, and having to rebuild a life. And because I had those years of training of being positive, it helped me through the most negative, sad, horrible times. But for other people, practice makes better. And when you're going through something bad, saying, okay, there's a reason, there's a purpose behind this, and there is a way through it. Another thing that I also learned was tomorrow will be a better day. I learned that tomorrow doesn't mean tomorrow. It means the future. But just because you're having this time now doesn't mean that you can't have something positive in the worst of times. And doesn't mean that things can't get better. There's always things coming down the pipeline. Being a part of clinical trials and seeing the behind the scenes of clinical trials also gave me hope and saying, okay, there's people that love humans and they're working on things for people living with rare diseases that we just don't have those tools yet, but they're going to come to fruition and we're going to have them at some point. And it might help in my lifetime. It might help in a future lifetime for somebody else, but those things are coming. So that gives me positivity. And just holding on, realizing that the smallest glimmer of hope can get you through. And when you need help, reach out and seek it. And that will actually ignite your hope and ignite your positivity. And even if the person isn't able to help you, maybe they can pass you on to someone that can, or maybe it sparks something in you that you're able to bring forward that you're like, okay, if I can't do A, B, and C, but I need to get to Z, what can I do? And another thing that keeps me positive, I grew up with a learning disability, and having to know that there's more than one way to accomplish something. So if I want to accomplish Z, I don't have to take A through Z to get there. I can jump around and do the parts that I can do to the best of my ability. And then other people will see me taking action, and then they will jump in and do the parts that they can do. And it will start filling it in. And all of a sudden we have a full picture and I've accomplished Z. And it isn't always a linear line. Sometimes it gets really messy and it's just a whole bunch of scrambles, but it can get done and accomplished. We just have to keep figuring out the pieces. And if it's still too big, break it down a little bit more and find it. And when you're having your worst day ever, give yourself the grace to lay in bed or do whatever it is that you need to do to feel better. And when you're having a good day, take on some of those smaller pieces. Don't overwhelm yourself so that you can eventually lead to whatever your mission is or goal, and it will be accomplished. Give yourself grace that you need to take the time and the patience to accomplish something. Don't expect to do it all in one day.
That was beautiful. And I feel more motivated. I'm ready to go and take on the world right now. But main objective of this interview was thinking about our rare disease community and how we can get them to feel empowered to take action. What advice would you give to someone in the rare disease community that is maybe on the edge of taking action, or maybe they've just started it? How can they go from just being a listener to being a person who is actually a change maker?
You just have to take it on one step at a time. When you say, well, I don't know how to do this, so I'm not going to do it. Well, give it a try. What do you think it takes to accomplish this mission of yours? What do you think it takes to move forward and do the parts you can do? That will build you up. That will build up the people around you. And then you all will rise together and know that it's okay if it takes longer than you expected. It's okay if you have to take time off. For me, time changed. It's not 24-hour clock anymore. It's moment to moment to moment. And some moments are better than other moments. And give yourself that flexibility, that grace, and that patience to know that, okay, today I'm going to make a phone call. Tomorrow, I might go down and testify. They only give you usually about 2 minutes to testify when you do go work on legislation. So it's not like you have to get up and spend an hour of energy to accomplish it. But the first time you testify, there will be people in the audience and legislators sitting up listening to your testimony. And they might come to you afterwards and say, hey, well, I'm working on this other project, and this is how I see it overlapping. And this is how you just touched my life. Even if you only shared your story in 2 minutes, it's still 2 minutes that will create a ripple effect and get things moving, keep things moving. And as long as you are willing to do something when you can do something, then you will be making a difference. You will become a change maker just by taking all of the opportunities that you're able to take and then giving yourself grace when you need a timeout.
And just one final question. For us in the rare disease community, how can we support you and your campaign or people just like you? And then it seems like you got this big vision of the future. What do we need to do to support individuals like yourself?
Well, thank you. I think that the biggest thing right now that people can do to help someone that's and has a rare disease, but they're a caregiver of someone with a rare disease that's trying for legislation is share and support it. Even if you don't live in their community, if you get legislators in that care about rare, then it will start multiplying and you will start seeing bigger and better things being done. And that one legislator can go in and teach other legislators. So even if you step out of it, there's other people that are championing that voice and continuing to carry it forward and creating a synergy. And as far as keeping the big picture growing, don't get stuck in your silo. Realize that there's people with other rare diseases that also need help. There's people with other rare diseases that need the time, attention, and energy pennies that you are able to give. And it's not all about financial. It's physical, emotional, spiritual support. Prayers are always helpful for those of you who are inclined to pray. But being positive and saying, hey, we have someone that is bringing the voice of rare forward. Let's support them. And as a legislator, as someone in the rare disease community that's sharing their story, or even give grace to someone who's just learning about rare and they have a story to share, but they haven't got it quite together yet. Help them out and help, because our voices resonate and they get louder and louder the more that we come together, work together, and especially with social media in this day and age, sharing, liking, clicking, resharing information, posts, and also, hey, I have this pain point in my life. What can be done to fix it? It might be that we need a new law. It might be that we need to take away a law that's already on the books. That's possible. It's something that can be done. And sharing helps us get the best for today's society, as well as helps us improve tomorrow's future.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ingle, for sharing your stories, your insight. It really was inspirational on my end. I think that it's going to be very beneficial to our community. And like you said about the likes and shares, oftentimes as a rare disease person, it's difficult to give money or to fund. But the simple action of clicking like, resharing is, in my books, a form of donation or a form of putting something forward towards a fund and supporting your organization. So next Tuesday, I believe, we look forward to sharing your victorious announcement. And again, I do thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.